Imagine this. You've had a long, exhausting day at work, and all you want is to get home, relax, unwind, and have a peaceful evening. But no, as you're pulling into your driveway, you find something totally unbelievable. Your neighbor Karen's shiny white SUV is parked right in your driveway again. And it's not just a one-time thing, no, it's happening repeatedly. I live in a small, quiet neighborhood where people typically respect each other's space. My house is on a corner lot with a driveway that's essential not just for my own car, but also for my partner's car and, on occasion, my elderly mom's visits. She's not exactly sprinting to the door these days, so keeping the driveway clear is critical for her safety and convenience. It's my driveway, I pay for it, I maintain it. Simple, right? Well, that's where Karen comes in. Karen is my next door neighbor, or technically, she's across the street, but the distance doesn't stop her from treating my driveway like her personal parking spot. She's in her mid-40s, always decked out in yoga pants that have never seen a yoga mat. And her primary weapon is a mix of condescending tone and a smug, self-righteous smirk. If you picture her with a messy blonde bob and a venti iced coffee glued to her hand, you're not far off. At first, I thought her parking in my driveway was just an honest mistake. Sure, that makes sense, right? But then it kept happening. Over and over. Every time I'd come home, there she was, blocking my driveway. The first time, I knocked on her door and politely asked her to move. She apologized with one of those fake, sing-song oh sorry responses and moved her car. Problem solved, right? Wrong. A few days later, it happened again. And again. By the third time, I was starting to feel like I was in a bad sitcom. I'd come home from work, find her car parked smack in the middle of my driveway, and then trudge over to her house to ask her to move it. The second time she tried that I'll just be a minute excuse, even though her car had been parked there long enough to gather a layer of leaves. By the fourth time, her tone shifted from apologetic to outright dismissive. She waved me off like I was a mosquito buzzing around her frappuccino and said, "Come on, it's not like you're using it all the time." That's when I snapped. She told me it was just so much more convenient for her to park there while she unloaded groceries. Groceries? The Trader Joe's is a 5-minute drive away, and I'm pretty sure she hasn't cooked a meal since the Bush administration. I started keeping track of these incidents, documenting everything. I snapped pictures of her car in my driveway with timestamps. I even kept a little notebook to jot down dates and times. Yeah, I was becoming that person, but Karen left me no choice. When I tried reasoning with her again, she turned up the entitlement. "This isn't really your driveway, you know," she said one afternoon, crossing her arms and wearing sunglasses like they were a crown. "It's part of the easement." I stood there, genuinely dumbfounded. "Karen, the easement is the strip of grass between the sidewalk and the curb. The driveway is on my property." But she didn't care. "Well, that's your opinion," she said, flipping her hair and walking back to her car. The tipping point came on a Saturday morning. My MOM was visiting, and I'd cleared the driveway so she could park safely and avoid walking on the uneven sidewalk. I stepped inside to grab a cup of coffee, only to hear my MOM yelling from outside, "Who the heck is this woman?" I ran outside to find Karen's SUV parked behind my mom's car, blocking her in. Karen was standing there, wild-eyed, arguing with my MOM about why she needed to park there for an emergency errand. "Emergency?" I asked, stepping into the fray. "I need to pick up cupcakes for my daughter's soccer team," she said, as if cupcakes were the kind of crisis FEMA should be handling. "Karen, you're blocking my elderly MOM in my driveway. Move your car now," I snapped. She rolled her eyes like I was being unreasonable. "You're being so dramatic," she said. "I'll only be 5 minutes." 5 minutes turned into 15, and by the time Karen finally moved her car, I was done being nice. It was time to escalate. After the cupcake incident, I knew I couldn't keep letting Karen use my driveway as her personal valet service. Reasoning wasn't going to work, so I went into what I like to call Operation Document and Dominate. First, I installed a security camera aimed directly at my driveway. It wasn't an expensive setup, just a basic motion-activated camera I picked up on sale. But it did the job. I wasn't about to rely on phone pictures anymore. I needed video proof of Karen's shenanigans in case things escalated further. Spoiler alert, they did. Second, I called my local zoning office to confirm what I already knew. My driveway is private property, not part of any easement or public space. I made sure to get it in writing. because I had a feeling I'd need it. With everything lined up, I waited. It didn't take long. A couple of days later, I came home to find her SUV parked in my driveway again. This time, she wasn't even around. I knocked on her door, but no answer. Fantastic. Now I was stuck staring at her car blocking my driveway, while my groceries melted in the trunk. Fine. Two can play this game. I parked my car directly behind her SUV, trapping it in the driveway. If she thought I was going to spend my evening hunting her down to move it, she was wrong. I left a note on her windshield that said, "Hi Karen, since you've made yourself comfortable in my driveway, I hope you don't mind if I make myself comfortable blocking you in. Let me know when you're ready to talk like an adult." Then, I went inside, grabbed a snack, and settled in for some Netflix. About 2 hours later, there was a pounding on my front door. Guess who? Karen. She was standing there looking like she had just walked out of a particularly grueling PTA meeting. Her face was red, her arms were flailing, and her voice was already screeching. "You can't block me in," she screeched. "That's illegal." I leaned against the doorframe, doing my best impression of someone who has all the time in the world. "You're right, Karen. Blocking someone's car on private property is illegal. You know what else is illegal? Trespassing. Which is what you're doing every time you park in my driveway." She was clearly not expecting that response. "But it's not trespassing," she stammered. "I told you this driveway isn't private property." I held up my phone and pulled up the email from the zoning office. "According to the city, it is. Would you like me to forward this to you? Or maybe the police?" Her face twisted from indignation to panic. "You're being unreasonable," she said. "I just needed a place to park for a little while." I shrugged. "And I just need my driveway to not be used as your personal parking lot." "Funny how that works." She stormed off in a huff, muttering something about calling the police. I let her drive away and thought that would be the end of it. But no, Karen wasn't done yet. A few days later, I woke up to find her car parked diagonally across my driveway, taking up so much space that not even my car could squeeze in. This time, I didn't bother knocking. Nope, it was time to bring out the big guns. I called the towing company. "Hi," I said, trying to keep my voice steady with a mix of rage and satisfaction. "I have a car parked illegally on my private property, and I need it removed." The dispatcher assured me someone would be there within the hour. I grabbed a lawn chair, poured myself a cup of coffee, and sat on my porch to enjoy the show. The tow truck showed up right on time, and the driver started hooking up Karen's precious SUV. Just as he was about to drive off, Karen burst out of her house like a tornado in Lululemon. "What are you doing? You can't tow my car," she screamed, running toward the truck. The driver didn't even blink. "Ma'am, this car is parked illegally on private property. The owner of the driveway called us." Karen spun around to glare at me. "You can't do this. I'll call the police." I raised an eyebrow. "Please do. I'd love to explain to them why your car keeps trespassing on my property." She tried pleading, bargaining, yelling. None of it worked. Within minutes, her car was gone, leaving Karen standing in my driveway, slack-jawed and fuming. Later that day, I got a knock on my door, but it wasn't Karen this time. It was one of my neighbors. Apparently, Karen had been going door to door trying to rally the neighborhood against me, claiming I was harassing her and abusing my power as a property owner. But honestly, everyone knew what she was like. We'd all dealt with her nonsense. By the next day, word had spread. Karen went into full damage control mode and stopped barking in my driveway. But not before she left me a passive-aggressive note. "I hope you're happy ruining your neighborly reputation. Some people are so selfish." I framed it. For a blissful week, my driveway was Karen-free. No smart SUVs blocking the way. No excuses about cupcake emergencies. Just peace and quiet. But Karen, being Karen, wasn't going to let me win without one final act of petty revenge. One morning, as I was taking out the trash, I noticed something odd near the end of my driveway, a fresh pile of garbage. Not my garbage. Karen's. At least 3 overflowing bags, a broken chair, and what looked like an old cat tree. The cherry on top, a handwritten sign taped to one of the bags that said, "If you don't like sharing, here's all your space back." Karen clearly thought this was some kind of statement, but all it proved was that she had the maturity of a wet paper bag. I snapped a few pictures because, at this point, documenting Karen's antics had become a hobby. Then I dragged the bags back across the street to her curb. That should have been the end of it. Later that afternoon, I heard a knock at my door. Standing there was a police officer with Karen lurking dramatically behind him. arms crossed and smirking like she had just outsmarted me in a game of chess. "Good afternoon," the officer said politely. "Your neighbor here claims you've been harassing her and dumping trash on her property." Karen piped up, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I just don't feel safe anymore. He's been so aggressive ever since I parked in his driveway. I don't know what to do." She even threw in a sniffle for good measure. Luckily, I was ready for this nonsense. I smiled at the officer and said, "I'm so glad you're here. Let me show you something." I pulled up my phone and opened my gallery, which was basically a highlight reel of Karen Chronicles at this point. I showed him pictures of her car parked in my driveway, complete with timestamps, and the video footage from my security camera of her dumping the trash. Karen's face went from smug to panicked in record time. "I was just trying to make a point," she stammered. The officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, I see no evidence of harassment here, but dumping trash on someone else's property, that's illegal." He turned to me. "Would you like to press charges for trespassing and illegal dumping?" Karen's jaw dropped. "You can't be serious," I said. "I think the officer just wants to make sure we're both following the law." "Isn't that what you wanted?" She sputtered something unintelligible, but the officer wasn't having it. He told her to clean up her trash immediately and warned her that if she ever trespassed on my property again, she'd face a fine or worse. After the officer left, Karen sulked back to her house, but not before shooting me one last death glare. I gave her a cheerful wave and said, "Thanks for stopping by." That was the last time Karen tried anything. She still gave me the occasional dirty look, and I'd sometimes catch her muttering to herself when she walked by my house. But her days of parking in my driveway and dumping trash were over. As a bonus, word of Karen's antics spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. The other neighbors, who'd already been fed up with her entitled behavior, took it as a green light to start pushing back. The couple next door stopped letting her dog roam onto their lawn, and another neighbor locked their trash bins because Karen had been using them for overflow garbage. It was like the entire street had finally decided they'd had enough. Karen had officially lost her Queen Bee status. A few weeks later, I saw a moving truck parked in front of Karen's house. At first, I thought she was just redecorating. But no, she was moving out. Apparently, dealing with an entire neighborhood of people who wouldn't put up with her nonsense anymore was just too much for her. As the truck pulled away, I couldn't resist one last jab. I grabbed a piece of chalk and wrote at the end of my driveway, "Vacancy." No Karen allowed. It wasn't my finest piece of art, but it made me and the neighbors laugh. And honestly, that's what mattered. If this experience taught me anything, it's that dealing with entitled people like Karen takes patience, persistence, and a willingness to stand your ground. Oh, and maybe a security camera or two. Now, every time I pull into my blessedly Karen-free driveway, I smile and think, if anyone else tries this, I'm ready. Because let's be real, where there's one Karen, there's bound to be another.